welcome everyone. We're going to let you in a little early while we're waiting on others to join. You guys are kind of early birds for us. So just hang tight. We're going to wait a little bit closer to 1 before we begin, but we're welcome. Enjoy our session today. We will have you muted when we do begin, but you'll have an opportunity to talk, we promise. Lee, what are you drinking over there?
I'm drinking Earl Grey tea from my meetings mug. So Earl Grey is made with bergamot. Bergamot is like a little orange that like only used to grow in some little island in the Indian Ocean or something. Does anyone know about this? This is my general question to start off all webinars, is to quiz people about exotic fruits. But yeah, it's like bergamot, right? Is that what I think that's?
Oh, I don't know. I like my tea, the way my mother makes it, with a lot of ginger and spices, and not the Starbucks kind of chai, my kind of chai, but
I don't know. Yeah. I actually, that was my other choices. I was going to make some chai, but this was quick and easy. So yep.
Love that mug. We need lots more of people who love meetings. Great.
Does everybody know Vinu already? Is this like your crowd? Do you know these folks already?
I know a lot of them. So hello, it's good to see faces, names. Looking forward to seeing you guys in some of the breakout sessions that we're going to do today too. So it's top of the hour. So Lee, feel like starting?
Yes, I'm. Okay. But before I start, I want to recognize Ginny Winkworth has bergamot essential oil on her desk right now, which I think is like a really important part of this webinar. That's what people are going to remember is the bergamot, not the engagement tips.
But what does it do? Is it just relaxing? Is it?
Ginny, do you want to tell us what the essential oil does? Are we putting you on the spot?
So it's supposed to be like a relaxation thing. I've only started dabbling in essential oils, and I read somewhere that the smell is supposed to relax you. So occasionally I take the cap off and take a sniff. I don't know that it really helps, but I pretend that it does.
Yeah. Mind over matter, Jenny. Take it.
Exactly. But it does, just so Lee knows, it does have a little picture of a sort of a citrusy fruit on it. So I'm guessing that's what it comes from.
Yeah. I've never actually seen one in the flesh, but.
So anyway, sorry to detract from.
Oh, no, thank you. That was our tip for the day. So appreciate it.
Now we're 1 minute over. Okay, Vinu, sorry.
That's okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Vinu Deschetti. I am the event tech advocate here at EVA. We do virtual conferences and registration and have learned a lot along the way and continue to learn. And we love to share what we learn out there. And especially when we meet great people like Lee. Lee Gimpel is with BetterMeetings, and he has graciously joined us today to help us kind of explore more about engagement. In terms of the virtual world in our meetings. I think we've gone from talking about how do we just pivot, move, get online to go virtual. And now I'm seeing that we've done that, and we've all learned a lot of lessons about that. And I think the number one thing that we're hearing a lot of is how do we make that change and improve engagement a lot. So welcome, Lee. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. I didn't want to start talking with the mute on. So good to be here. I woke up this morning and I thought I get to talk to Vinu today. It's like so great.
So Lee and I met a few months ago, and we've been needing to connect even before then. And we finally did. And we've had some great conversations just about what's going on in our industry and what can we do with technology and where does the ownership really lie in improving where we're going with this whole virtual hybrid world. I know we're all thinking about it, and I think it'll be great today to not only hear from Lee, but also have to get input from you guys and see what you're thinking, what you're hearing, and what's working, what's not working from you guys. So we're excited to hear that. Before we move on to Lee, as wants to get you guys into a breakout room, but before that, I do want to share with you a article that it's a little dated. Can you guys see my screen now? So here is an article from EventMB, just talking about, granted, this was in July of 2020, but I think this still holds true that people are, in terms of meeting planners, are 40% are, they feel like they're not able to do a successful virtual event, mostly because they're not able to do that engagement. So looking at how do you go beyond just streaming video. So, Lee, do you want to talk to us a little bit about what you want us to do in these breakout rooms?
Yeah, I mean, this is super simple. And I think for as much as people are like, I just came here to watch a webinar, that doesn't really teach anything, right? We can talk about engagement and then, that's it. So we really want you to experience some of it. And so if we were doing this actually in a room, we were there in person, there'd be this moment where we would all come in, we'd get our coffee, we'd sit down, we'd bump into people, we'd be like, oh, Heather Haynes, it's been so long, right? And we'd have this moment. We don't get to do that online, right? It's 1 o'clock, everyone signs on at like 12:59 or something like that, right? And it's super simple, it's super easy. It's just a couple minutes. You just get to meet some other folks that are doing the work that you're doing. It's only gonna be 6 minutes. I'm just gonna drop into the room what we're gonna be talking about here. It's fine. It's very low stress. So just introduce yourselves. Each person gets about 2 minutes. What brings you here today? And then just make sure that everyone gets a chance to talk. That's about it. Super simple. Who are you? What brings you here? Why are you here?
So we'll see you in a couple of minutes, or we'll see you in the breakout rooms. Hopefully we'll connect with you. See you in a bit. Lee, now, let's see here. There we go. Now that everybody is joining us back in, a little bit more about you. You're based here in the DC area, and you've worked with a lot of different types of groups, from government agencies to associations. Do you have a feeling that there's a particular industry that virtual or hybrid works better for, or is it something that you think that's applicable to everybody?
I think 2 years ago, we would have all said we hate it, and maybe a lot of people still hate it, but I think about almost every event out there, conferences that I'm talking about now. If it's not right here in the DC area and I have to get on a plane and I have to take a day to get there and I have to take a day to get back, I think it's really hard to argue with that, unless it's like I'm going to Hawaii and it's awesome. So I think it's pretty universal. I think there are probably cases where there's a stronger argument to be made for in-person versus online. If you're going to demonstrate a car, right? Like the auto show is coming here to DC. We could do that online, but it would be hard to jump in a new Ferrari online at this point, right? Even with VR, that's not great. But if we're really talking about, people learning and people connecting, online's pretty good. And I dare say that I'm sort of ignoring which industries work better, but I would say, a lot of what's happened over the last year or two is we've realized we were going to Vegas to sit in rooms to watch PowerPoint, and we don't need to fly to Vegas to sit in rooms to watch PowerPoint. So if we're just going to do that, online's pretty good. And even if there's this meeting component or, connection networking component, in a way, it can actually be better online. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but there's a lot of control and there's a lot that we can do here that just doesn't happen when you're like, people will meet in the hallways. So I've kind of ignored your question, but that's
okay. But I think it applies to everyone, right?
Yeah.
But it depends, right? Each organization is different, each membership, each attendees, and you got to really figure it out. And I think what I've heard and have been reading a lot about is how people, in this last couple of years, people have had to rush to go to virtual and hybrid. I just got to figure it out. I have to cancel. I have to do something. Let me just get the technology on board. There hasn't been a lot of time to think about how do I do this where my attendees can get the full benefit of engagement. Let's, maybe think beyond what I might do with my learning management system. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about some of the things when people are putting these conferences together. Now that we've had time to breathe a little, let's hope. I know everyone's still kind of scrambling with Omicron, but now that we've gone through it once, maybe twice, maybe more, what can we do to, kind of to maybe learn from some of our pitfalls, and look at, okay, what didn't go so well? Because I learned a lot from my failures. I learned a lot from them, and hopefully I improve. But I don't take those as bad things. It's only makes it stronger. So what are some of the things that you're seeing out there?
In terms of things we're learning from, or things that you think we have now learned?
With going virtual, in terms of like, what have we done wrong, or what are the things that we should be looking for, or things to avoid?
Yeah. Boy, we could be here all day with the things we've done wrong. There's a lot of, I mean, that's like the reason, right? There's only, a couple dozen people on this call. I think everyone's been burned by going to other calls that are, or other, webinars or whatever that are very dull. And some of you have just joined us after we did a breakout already. So you've already missed the part of the good part. We'll do another one in a bit though. I mean, the first thing I would say is a lot of events, God, this sounds terrible, but a lot of events in person weren't that great. And people are very fondly recalling, oh gosh, if only we could go back to the convention center. And it was like, the convention center was a lot of us sitting in chairs watching PowerPoint. It was like people watching screens. It's just the screens were 10 feet wide. And then we just adapted that to online. And I think whatever energy there was in the room and whatever sort of like sense of purpose or humanity or whatever was there gets lost. And it is very, very difficult. I mean, unless you are a great speaker by yourself to talk to this thing, right? This little piece of glass, it's you're home alone. I think it's really hard to build a conference around people doing PowerPoint. I think that's universally true, but it's even truer if it's remote. You just have to be great, and very few people are great, or very few people have the time to make it great. And then I think we basically sucked out all those moments that get people to go to Vegas or get people to go to Chicago or wherever, that I want to meet other people. I want to meet Vinu. I want to bump into her in the halls. And what happens, that's why we did this moment here in the beginning is, sign on to our webinar, sign into our conference. It starts at 10 in the morning. Everyone signs in at 9:59, and then we sit there and there's no engagement, right? There we just watch. We can't even, the chat is turned off. No one can see us. There's nothing, right? It's just one way. So I think you have to be really intentional about saying, how do we connect people? And it's not just, I guess they'll bump into each other, at the cafe or in the halls. There are no halls. There is no cafe. So I think those are probably, the intention of why, I guess that's where it starts. The intention of why are we doing this, right? Yeah, it's the annual conference. We do it every year. That's really different than going in and saying, we're trying to cure cancer. Well, how does this session do that? And a lot of sessions at a lot of conferences don't really do what we want them to do. So the intentionality, I think, is big in terms of setting it up. I think not building it around PowerPoint, and I think adding in those hallway moments, or trying to control that and saying, people want to meet. That's often what gets people to conferences. They want to confer. They don't want to be, presented to.
I agree with you, Lee. I think engagement is not a problem that's only a virtual problem, right? It's something that we've all been thinking about for our in-person events. What can we do that's different, going back to the title of this session today, that's different than a coffee break or a snack break or a reception? How are you? What are we going to do? But the same kind of thought process now applies for online content, for virtual events. If you're streaming and just having that one-way conversation, that's the same thing as the content that you have on your learning management system, right? Or you're watching Netflix. It's different, and not to say that content isn't valuable. It's valuable, but when you're talking about that engagement piece of having those memorable experiences, making connections, I agree with you. It definitely has to be intent. And we see a lot of times on the platform side, a lot of people say, well, you said that your platform can do networking rooms or gamification, and all of this, but it didn't work. and as much as, and yes, I'm definitely playing the defense attorney hat here. No matter what platform you use, and they can have great tools. There's a lot of great tools out there, but they're only as great as much planning as you do with them, and how intentional you are with that, and having that plan going into it. But not only just the day of the event, say, voila, here it is, but actually educating people that this is coming, creating hype around it, just as if you would like for a keynote speaker. And I think a lot of that, I think, is, again, I really like what you say about the intentional piece of it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the connections, making connections, and the value of the experience. And again, this goes back to also in-person events. What is that? What is that value? What is that? I mean, what's that connection between, doing networking, being satisfied with the event, not only from an exhibitor standpoint, but also from an attendee standpoint?
Yeah, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and walk the talk here. I knew we were talking about this, so I rigged something up. We're going to try this. I am going to ask you folks in the audience to answer the question for me. I'm cheating a little bit. So if you look down at the chat, I think I got those points right. So this is a chat storm. I use it all the time. I would like you all to chat in something, but the challenge here is just hold on to it. So you're going to type, and then wait, and we're going to say go, and then everyone is going to do it at the same time. We'll see if this works. I know people aren't on camera here, but I assume you're out there. So how do you think these things are related, right? I think this is the question you're asking, right? Vinu, is networking quality or engagement, satisfaction, event ROI, and I think about attendees, I think about speakers, I think about sponsors, I think about staff, or like all those, who are all these people at an event? It's not just the attendees. So I'm going to give you like a minute. I've sort of hijacked this here, Vinu. Take a minute, type it in, try not to hit enter. We'll give you the countdown in a sec. It's going to be awkwardly quiet here for a second. And Vinu and I are just going to look at each other knowingly. I'm going to put this back in to the chat because I know there are a couple people that have come in as we're doing this, and they're like, "What is going on?"
You have a word for this. A term.
This thing right here, I call it a chat storm, or other people call it a chat storm, or a chatterfall, or chat bomb, or something like that. So let's give people another like 30 seconds. So I don't know what anyone else is typing, but I assume everyone is typing at the moment and coming up with a couple thoughts about how these things are related. Doesn't have to be all of them. Doesn't have to be the best. All right, Vinu, you want to give people a countdown? On Vinu's mark, you're going to hit enter. Let's hope we get something. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, look at that. There's people out there. All right, this is exciting.
Awesome.
So, okay, you know what? I'm going to
reading Lee.
yeah. All right. So take a sec, read through there, everyone. See what other people came up with. Let's do that. We're trying to engage.
Yeah, I see some about networking. Imani put networking is rooted in connections that can last outside of the conference. I think that's spot on, because that's what it's all about, right? You just don't want to shake hands with someone and say, see you later. You want to make sure that that's not a meaningful connection. I think that's the key there. Thank you, Imani.
I mean, it's the two of us up here. Anybody else want to explain what you just wrote or what you didn't have time to fully flesh out?
Feel free to unmute yourself. Go for it.
I'll take a stab at it. So I kind of just gave a very general answer. I just said that those things are all related because they can contribute to a successful meeting. In other words, if you have good networking quality, there are some who just come to find out who's in my industry and who can I tap into as a resource. Satisfaction to me is relative because I could come to a meeting for a different reason than maybe Lee is coming to that meeting. So I kind of look at satisfaction as, am I giving people enough that they can feel this is a value. And then ROI is really, can I just keep the folks that, my stakeholders happy? So what can I show them, even if it looks differently than it was before? Maybe it's not a handshake, maybe it's a LinkedIn follow or a Facebook follow or something posted on Instagram about how great this particular group or this meeting was. So I think they all are connected. I know, in my opinion, is the better that they all are, the better the meeting, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. So
Yeah, totally. I feel like you cheated there though, Carol. If they're all better, then they're all better. I would say I'm going to agree with you. Yeah, no, that's fun. So should I actually answer the question now, Vinu? I feel like I totally hijacked that process.
Go for it.
So what I would say, and there's some really good answers here. I actually kind of would just like read everyone's answers, and maybe my answer will kind of be like the Voltron answer that will be everyone's answer combined into one mega answer. I don't know if that's true, but so I think about, why do people go to conferences or events? And if you look at the numbers, it's actually really high on the connection side and not so high on the content side, right? I mean, some of these numbers are like, it's 90% the connection versus like what I learned in that room. And if that's what's driving people to sign up, to pay money for it, to fly out there, if that piece isn't there, then I don't go next year, right? It's like, there's no reason for me to go there. And I think if I'm a vendor, I'm not paying money to stand at a booth, right? I'm paying money for sales or connections or something like that. So I think that's a really big networking piece. So I think the higher the networking is, the better it is, the more connections we make and the higher quality those connections are. Not just, here's my business card. We traded business cards. That's it. I think, but to really spend time with people and to really understand what's going on. So I think as that's higher, it becomes like a can't miss event. It becomes like there's higher energy. People are happy to be there. And I think we see less churn, right? Of if I'm an exhibitor or a sponsor and I'm meeting lots of good people and there's lots of stuff coming out of it, charge me whatever. I'm going next year, right? You don't have to keep sending emails or whatever. Fine, right? And then, I think for me as an attendee, I think about a couple of these conferences that I've gone to over the years that are really good at that. And I'm like, I'll just put it on the calendar. And it's not that price doesn't matter, but I'm going. And we think about, every year, oh gosh, we have to fill 30% new seats because 30% of the people aren't coming back. What if that number was 20%? What if it was 10%? What if everyone, what if we were bursting at the seams? We couldn't accommodate everyone, right? And that's what I think where we see the ROI of like, let's stop trying to drag people into this conference and let's try to, send out more emails and do Facebook ads and whatever. People just want to come back. And I think it's delivering on part of that promise. It's a conference where people get to confer. Anyway, that's my pitch. And I'm looking at some of the chat and,
Well, and I think Sharon has a good point too. It's just not about exhibitors as much as we need them. For some events, they really rely on that revenue to come in. A lot of organizations, their mission is about education, but part of that education is meeting other people in the industry that can support that education, right? Whether to further it, whether it's, we've done some scientific ones where there are networking rooms where they actually get together and problem solve and they share research and that's what's happening. Well, we hope is happening in person, but giving them literally the space to be able to do that. And I think, Lee, what I like about this next part is that we're all sitting here. I think we're all in agreement, right? That we've got to do better for engagement, no matter what the medium is. And I think you've got some really great ideas for us. You can share with us to kind of take away and say, oh, will this be good for us? What's top on your list?
Yeah. So a couple things. So the first thing I would say, we're going to actually demonstrate this in a sec. For some of you who just came in, we're going to do a little breakout in, I don't know, a couple minutes, and you'll actually get a chance to talk about this with other people and not just hear from the two of us, which is nice. But so I sketched this out for a client a long time ago, and I just keep it next to my desk and I keep going back to it. So, how do we do better connectivity? How do we do better networking? How do we do better engagement? this is usually what conferences are built around, a session that looks like this. I introduce Vinu, I say, Vinu's an expert on, event registration, and she's going to talk about that today. And then it's up to Vinu to spend 45 minutes or 90 minutes talking about that, doing a PowerPoint. And it's really hard to do that well, right? It's really hard to do that well. And then at the end, if there's time, if we haven't run over, right, we take a couple minutes of questions. So what I would say is, and we're going to try and do this here today, is to flip it just a little bit. And I was talking to Candice and Sherry Lou in my room about this, this idea of how do we change big speakers and add, more connectivity to that. And I think this is kind of the answer is, I still introduce Vinu, I still introduce my big speaker. We do something shorter. Maybe it's a question and answer, maybe it's a Pecha Kucha, maybe it's, it's 15 minutes. It's not 45 minutes. What are the big points? Then we put people in breakout rooms, right? We can do this in person. We can do it online. What did you think about that? How does that affect your job? Do you have questions about it? Do you totally disagree? That's what's happening here. And then this last part, maybe more questions, that come back to our speaker. Maybe it's more discussion, right? So I think just that simple kind of sandwiching of people getting to engage on the content instead of big person on stage, we call it stage on a stage. And then you leave, you go to the bathroom, you go to the next thing, person on stage, you leave, you go to the bathroom, right? Where's the chance where I actually get to engage with people? So I think that's the big one. I think the pretext of doing work, and I mean that like kind of tongue in cheek, but I want people to do work. I want to have them have a reason to come together. Candace's group was doing rehab here in my little breakout room, right? Like, what do you, let's come up with best practices for our field. Let's put you in groups, or let's give you a chance to interact on some document or whatever, is really different than just watching someone who's got 20 years of experience on the stage tell you, right? And I think inevitably you're like, oh my gosh, we worked together on that thing. Is a really good technique, I guess, or excuse. The other thing I would say is I was looking to see if I had a name tag here, but name tags I think are really brilliant. I love name tags. I know not everyone is super, key on them, but if I put here, my name is Lee, right? If I added something else there, it gives you more of a chance to talk to me. If we go to conferences, often we see these name tags and they just say like Lee, president, and then my association, AJBRCK or something. And no one has any idea what that is, especially if it's like manager or something. What does that guy do? So I would say, can we tweak that information to say more about, what is it you need help with? What is it that you're working in? What's the field? What's the, something that's more valuable? And we can do that here. I mean, if we all change our name tags to what brings you here? What do you need help with? Or where are you from? Gives us more of a reason to interact with other people. So I think the more you give people little nudges into connecting instead of just, God, I hope you're an extrovert that's just going to tackle people in the halls. Give people a little bit of help there.
Kind of reminds me that your name tag makes me think of the introduction of ribbons, right? Some ribbons were a great thing to add, first time attendee, or even the fun ones, that it just add a conversation piece that just allowed people to talk, to have something to talk about, which is great. And like you said, I really like that you can do that in your name that you've put into Zoom or however you're identified. I know pronouns is now the really acceptable now, but maybe take that even further. I really like that idea. I also like your idea about breaking up the sessions. The very first concept that you had. I love the drawing that you put up. It's so visual, right? Like for someone like me, I need to see something like that. How do you go about doing that? I mean, you're the master facilitator here. We're the meeting planners, and we literally give the speakers the space to do it. But how do we go about telling speakers? And this is getting into instructional design. What are some ways that you can talk to speakers or panels? Like, change it up a little bit. Don't talk for 45 minutes. What are some suggestions you have there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is if you put people into this vacuum of expectation and knowledge, they're just going to fill it with whatever they have, right? So most speakers are not professional speakers, right? Most speakers are not spending their career speaking to groups, right? economists, and they're great at that. They're not great at speaking, right? They're not stand-up comedians. They're not performers, right? So we do what is comfortable for us as speakers, and we do it occasionally. So you say, you're an economist, I want you to speak at my conference, or you're the regional, assistant vice president, come speak at the conference. We do what we've seen before, which is, I know what that looks like. I stand in front of a room and I do PowerPoint for 45 minutes. And if there's time at the end, I take a couple questions. But they haven't seen other formats. They haven't, even just this little thing, right? Or if we go back to, could you talk for less time, give people a chance to talk about what you just talked about, and then we talk about what they just talked about, right? It's pretty simple. That's not revolutionary. So I would say, we can establish expectations as the person running the conference to say, there's got to be some component in there that's interactive, or, you can't use PowerPoint, or you have to use a Pecha format, P-E-C-H-A, K-U-C-H-A. It's like a Japanese presentation format. We can dictate that, right? We wear the crown of power. Or we can say, and I've done, this kind of work for organizations, is we're going to train our speakers. We're going to, if not one-on-one, we're going to bring them together for an hour or 2 hours or a couple times and just say, let's sit down. Let's start with what you thought you were going to do, 2 months ahead of time. And let's really break it into something that's, let's workshop it. And with other people there going, oh gosh, what if I did it as a case study and had people, contribute on a collaborative board? I hadn't thought about that, right? It's often because the bar's so low, right? Most speakers at most conferences are not awesome. Because that bar's so low, it's pretty easy to get over that bar. And I think, speakers are busy, but if you say, look, can we make your presentation potentially twice as good for half as much effort, right? This is half as much effort, right? It takes a lot of effort to do a 45-minute PowerPoint, even if you're just reading slides. This takes a lot less effort, and it's going to be better, right? You're going to get better evaluations.
Just from a technical standpoint, I know we spend hours on doing pre-records and editing that and coordinating between multiple speakers for a session. So not that can't be done. I still do think there is value in, there's content that's got to get out there for education purposes. There's new research that needs to be announced, or new discoveries, just whatever that needs to be out there. And, you're doing the pre-records. Why not have that available online, and then have people point to that and say, hey, go visit this. But when we come together for this live session, then we get into this format of where we're really discussing it, as opposed to just watching, streaming something that could have been seen before. Granted, that may not be right for everyone, but I definitely you just have a lot more opportunities to change it up. But I tell you what, I think from what, the experiences a lot of our clients have with going through pre-records and getting ready for a virtual conference, the idea of saving that time and that money is got to be attractive. Just the headaches of it all. We do it. This is our business and we do it, and we're happy to do that. But I can imagine from a meeting planner standpoint that is one way. I'm sure you're being asked for ways to reduce your budget, your spend, and that may be a great way to do that. And still qualify for CEs for your sessions.
Yeah. I mean, the CE it's a difficult question, but yeah, I mean, if you're not a slave to those requirements, it does open up a lot of possibilities. So yeah.
Where do you want to go from here, Lee? Do you want to jump into the mock agenda, or? Yeah,
let's do that. Let me, I'm just going to screen share. I'm going to put this up in the chat so you all can see it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I would just like you all to think about your own events or your own agendas for something you've already done or something you're doing. But if you don't have one, I'm just going to give you one that you can sort of work on. And this is where I was talking about. Let's do this again. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, this is that mock agenda that I was talking about. So, if you don't have your own that you can think about, you can just look at this. Obviously, looking at this agenda, I've already put notes in that are kind of leading answers or leading questions. So we kind of know what's wrong and we know maybe what to do to fix it. I'm not going to go through here with a lot of depth. I'm just going to make this available to you if you want to use this as your example. But instead, what I'm going to have you do is just in the next minute or two, maybe on a piece of paper, just write down something that now that you've had the time and the space to think about some event that you do, right? Like you could do it at other times, but this is kind of this moment where we're thinking about it, right? The phone's not ringing. Just what's an event that you do? What's something that you could fix? Small thing, could be a small thing, to make it more engaging, to add connectivity to it, to add networking to it. We're going to give you about a minute or so to think about that. Then we're going to give you a chance to actually do this. We're going to put you in this moment. We're going to do the breakout rooms and you're going to get a chance to talk to, 2 or 3, well, probably 1 or 2 other people about, hey, here's the thing that I thought about, or I've got this issue. Can you help me with it? It's about 2 or 3 minutes a piece. Super simple, but you get to meet other people. And that's often the best part of doing these things. So take a minute or two to think about that. And Alexis, you can hold folks for a bit, but if you want to just start putting those rooms together.
How's that tea, Lee?
That's good. It's getting a little cold at this point, though. Also, I will say this next part is maybe going to be the best part here, where you actually get to talk to other people about, what they're doing or what you're doing, or, this mock-up agenda. Some people get a little nervous thinking, I just came here to watch 2 people talk, but, that you get to meet Kelly or Katerina or Carol or, is often way better than listening to Lee and Vinu.
Lee, I really like how you provided like a draft schedule because it makes it real, right? It's something concrete that you can look at instead of just kind of it's out there in the world and try to figure it out. So,
Yeah,
and this
totally.
is a pretty typical format.
Yeah. I think people will recognize their own events in it. I think in many cases. Okay. You may not have a fully formed idea, but that is fine. We're going to put you in some rooms. You're going to get a chance to just, hey, introduce yourselves and then talk about something you thought about or a question you have really on this topic. But, maybe we come out with some good ideas for the event that you have to do next week or next month. So also, Alexis, can you just make sure that we mix those rooms? If you can just recreate them to randomize it. I forgot about that. So, we're not all seeing the same people a second time. And then whenever you are ready, Alexis, and I think Vinu and I are going to find ourselves in rooms too. So you may get lucky and find us in your room. Whenever you're ready, Alexis. We had such a good conversation. How was your conversation, Vinu?
Oh my gosh, it was great. It was great to hear one person had already an engaged group. So good to go. And then Sharon was talking about, and I really like this piece about the purpose of keynote speakers. You've got great organizations are spending lots of money on keynote speakers, and they're great. They can be great motivational, but what do you do with them afterwards? Maybe not necessarily that speaker, but the content that speaker provided. I thought that was a great point because I often wonder, whether it's conferences I go to or we've hosted, I'm enjoying the content, but that seems to be it. You spend 6 figures on, maybe not 6 figures, but
maybe
lots of money that's spent into that. So make it
work.
work.
Actually, we talked about a similar thing, and I think it's that moment of collective excitement, right? Where you've just had this great speaker that you've brought in, and everyone goes, "God, I'd love to talk about that. That's so I've fired my brain up." And then the session ends. People go to the bathroom. They go to the next session.
Yeah, there's no time to get your excitement out and share that with someone.
Right.
That's engagement.
And again, it's like sandwiching it, right? Big speaker, big topic, whatever it is, you can have a chance to talk about it. Then we'll go on to something else. But just programming content without connection, I think that's a pretty easy way to drop it in there.
But it goes to your point about being intentional, just having the intent to not only just throw programming in there, but what do you do with it after the program or even during? So.
We have like 5 minutes left. I wanted to hear from people. I know we've got to close it out. I don't know. Where do we go with this, Vinu? There's never enough time.
Well, is there anyone else like to share? Definitely unmute yourself. We'd love to hear from you if you've got something you would like to share. I think there's value in learning from each other. So definitely let us know.
Hi, this is Karen. I don't really have something to share. I just wanted to get your thoughts. And I was talking about this in my breakout room, but we have a lot of the hybrid ones where you're basically planning 2 meetings in one. Like how can you bridge that connection between the virtual world and the in-person world? And I understand that you have to, I mean, we've been doing it where we can't do everything the same for both audiences, right? But there's got to be a way to bridge it together. Do you guys have any thoughts on how to do that?
We could stay after, we could talk about this more. My first thought is, I think a lot of people are trying to do a lot of combining, and I don't know that's what you necessarily are saying, but people are like, how do we get the people online and the people in person to meet? We're going to do kiosks and we're going to do all kinds of stuff. And, often you have 100 people or 500 people in person and 500 people online. Like, for simplicity's sake, I'm like, well, people in person and the people online can each stay in their own little worlds and not try and force that across. But I think there's an awful lot of, we have an online group, it can report out to, the speaker or something like that. Then we take questions from online and they're still included. The problem with a lot of hybrid events is we create a bifurcated society, right? Of the people in person, we pay attention to them, we ignore the people online. But that would be my quick thought. We could talk about this a lot more. That's a really pertinent topic these days.
And it definitely, I think this is the one thing that we're struggling with in the industry right now is how do we have the capacity to think about, even the capacity to think about how we're going to do hybrid, and then the capacity to actually implement it. And I think part of that is just having good teams that can help you navigate what is the in-person experience and actually implementing that. What is the virtual experience? And where does it make sense that they come together? Is it, I've seen it done really well where you've had a general session and both parties are together. Then they go out to their breakout rooms to talk about that general session. Virtual people are meeting with virtual people, in-person people with their in-person. And then they come back together into that general session room. Representatives from the in-person are standing up, sharing their story that the virtual people can hear. And then the representatives from the virtual world too, in their breakout rooms, are able to pop up on screen and share their story too. They may not be able to interact each other in the physical and the virtual people to interact together in the room, but there is that sharing of the stories and sharing of content. And that's, to me, something is better than nothing. And I think is an easy way, if you've got the technology and the support to do that, I think is one example of how that can be done.
Yeah. And we didn't talk about this before, but I guess we can stay after and we can do question time after because we're going to run out of time. And anyway.
So anyone else like to share their ideas or things they'd like to make changes?
I have a question for the group. I like the idea of continuing the conversation after the meeting. And if that organically happens between two people, that's great. But what platforms would you suggest us doing that after the fact?
So in my breakout room, we were fooling around with Jamboard. We just did it really fast in 2 minutes. And Jamboard is similar to Mural, MURAL, and Miro, MIRO. And there's a bunch of other platforms like that that are not like meeting platforms. They're like whiteboard collaboration platforms. And even something like Google Docs, Google Sheets, I think really simple, right? We don't want to make this complicated and people need to go to a tutorial. So like Google Docs, while not sexy, is easy. I would take easy over, exotic almost any day at this point. So I think that's a really good one. And yeah, in our group, we're working on Jamboard, and I think that's a really great one. Of basically lets you put Post-it notes up around ideas and drag them together and make sense of them. That would be my quick thought there.
And I've also seen where people have done intentional meetups afterwards, whether it's their own Zoom or whatnot, but actually making the intent while you're at the conference, virtual conference or in-person conference of saying, okay, we met today, let's meet at another day. It's kind of sales 101 of, okay, well, I met you, so let me get you on the calendar right now for the next time. But that leaves with an actual action item. And, with easy Zoom, again, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, a lot of marketing behind it. You can let's just meet up. It's like, let's meet up for coffee, but actually making that almost like a homework assignment for people. Yeah. Well, great. Well, we're out of time and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for joining. So Lee, what are the three connection techniques again that you want to leave us with?
So I'm going to just quickly say name tags, in person or online, I think is really like a good way to lead people into the conversation. I think giving people an excuse to work together, you're not calling it networking, you're saying we're working together on something is a really good one. And then I think to do like, let's call them mini breaks, right? Like this graphic again here, right? We don't have to just do 45 straight minutes of a talk. Let's give people a chance to meet and connect during that thing. I wish we could do like another hour on 50 more of those techniques, but those are going to be my quick 3 for today. And I would like to thank you for having me and everyone for staying and coming and staying, I guess.
Well, Lee, thank you so much. It's always great to hear from someone that walks the talk and has done this and has something to share. I know, guys, as meeting professionals, this has been a couple of tough years for us, but we're all learning. We're hanging in there. So I'm wishing you all to be safe and healthy and have fun with this time of innovation. It really is a new time for us as meeting planners in this industry, and the sky's the limit for us what we can do. So I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody comes up with. Again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Vanu Deschetti with EVA and Lee Gimpel with BetterMeetings. Thank you very much.